Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another math lesson with Mr. Hopkins. In the previous lesson, we looked at characteristics of quadratic equations and parts of the parabola. Today, we're going to continue with that. We left off right here, and this will also review the first half of what we did and discussed. So the vertex, let's see here. The vertex is right here. It's also known as the turning point. So that point is negative 1, 0. The axis of symmetry, we learned, is the invisible line represented by a dotted line that cuts our parabola in half. So if I was to fold my parabola over that line, it would land on itself. So that line crosses the x-axis at negative 1, so the equation is x equals negative 1. The zeros. Remember, in a parabola, you could have 2 zeros, you could have 1 zero, or you could have no zeros. So if your parabola was below the x-axis, you would have 2 zeros. If your parabola lands on the axis like this one does at negative 1, 0, then there's 1, 0. Or you could have a parabola that lies above the x-axis, and in this case, there's no zeros. Okay, the domain. One of the hardest things we did in the previous lesson. Remember, the domain is how far left and how far right your graph goes. So as this goes up, it's got arrows on it. As it goes up, it's also going out. So if it goes out forever, it's going to negative infinity. And on this side, it's also going up and out, and it'll end at positive infinity, or approach positive infinity. So the domain is all x such that, this is how we've been writing it, proper notation, smallest value comes first, negative infinity is less than x and less than positive infinity. We'll get used to that. And the range. The range is the y values, so all y is such that, and it's the highest and lowest points. We always go from smallest to greatest, so let's talk about the lowest point. The lowest point is 0, y equals 0, and it can equal 0 because it's touching the line. Y values and less than, well, we had arrows going up on this, so it's going to positive infinity. I can never equal infinity, so that's why I'm only using less than signs. Okay, moving on. Over what interval is this graph increasing? Let's erase some of this so we can see our work. Okay, sorry about that. Froze a little bit. Over what interval is this increasing? We increase when we're going up. And we read our graphs from left to right, just like a storybook. So it's increasing right here. So when x is greater than negative 1. Greater than or equal to negative 1. And vice versa, when is this graph decreasing? Well, it's decreasing from left to right, right here. So anything that's less than or equal to negative 1. Number 2, what is the value of the turning point in the table? Well, the turning point, remember, is right here. So the y values are always the same on either side of it. So having said that, we're looking for a point where it goes down the same amount on each side. So 213 is the turning point. See 12 and 12, 9 and 9, 4 and 4, -2, and if there's another point up here, it would be -2. A quadratic function g of x is shown partially in the table below. The turning point of the function is 3, -8. So here's the turning point. Think about how the outputs repeat in a quadratic function and answer the following. So part A says fill in the missing outputs. So if -6 is on this side, then -6 has to be to the right of it. 0, 0. Then we've got 10, 10, 24, and 24. What are the zeros of the function? So if you remember, the zeros of a function is where it crosses the x-axis. So that's when the y value is 0. So the y value is 0 here and here. So the zeros are x equals 1 and x equals 5. What is the function's y-intercept? So that was in the previous lessons. Y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. So that's when x equals 0. So x equals 0 here, so the y-intercept is 0, 10. And lastly, for the domain interval -1 to 7, so that's stating all of these -1 to 7, what is the range? Again, we always list from lowest to greatest. So let's look at the range. That's the y values. The lowest is -8, and the greatest is 24. So it's going to be -8. Range is the y values to 24. Okay, that's the rest of the lesson. If you have any questions, please reach out.